Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another 2024 election prediction. This time we're taking a look at Kamala Harris up against Donald Trump. And this is my second to last prediction. My final prediction will be on November 4th. So I'm recording this a day before. So let's just get right into this as we set up the safe red states and safe blue states. I am using different colors for the Republican presidential candidate here because I just think a darker red looks a bit better on the screen. But I'll show you all the variations here. So the current color, this is safe, this is likely, this is lean, and this is tilt. So it's pretty much the same except for the safe and likely colors, but it's kind of easy to tell the difference. But let me just finish up setting up the safe states. And I think we can go right into this. All right, we're going to start off with, I guess we could do Alaska. Again, Alaska, most polls here have it as a 7 to 8% Trump lead, and that's kind of what I expect. I expected the trend a bit to the left from 2020. It was only an R plus 10 state that time around, so I do expect the trend a bit left in this next election. In Iowa, we haven't had a Seltzer poll in a while. I'm just defaulting to a likely Republican Iowa. I think Trump wins it by about 8. In Florida, Florida's an interesting one because the polls say Florida's R plus 6, but I highly doubt that because you can take a look at the early vote data is just not good for Democrats here, and it gets worse every day. They're down by 11 according to party registration in Florida, and they're losing Miami-Dade already. So Florida's making this hard turn to the right. It's going to keep on trending right. It's going to be a safe Republican state. I think Trump's on track to win it by about 12 percentage points. That may be a bit of a bold take, but I think that's where we really stand right now, that Florida is just going to go safe Republican at this point. It's kind of out of reach for Democrats now, and they really shouldn't try here. They should try in Texas instead for the future elections, because Florida's just kind of gone off the board. In Ohio, we could take a look at that state, and polls have it as relatively the same as 2020. We had a recent Trafalgar poll said Trump was up 6.5 percentage points. So that's kind of about where I expected. I think it'll go about R plus 8, which is good news for Sherrod Brown. Gives him a chance at winning, because if it's over 10, Sherrod Brown has no path to winning Ohio, realistically. He wouldn't get enough ticket splitters. But as of right now, I think Harris is keeping the state from going safe Republican. So Florida's going to be more to the right than Ohio is, in my opinion. In Texas, again, the early voting figures are a bit weird in Texas. I don't think they're leading by this much according to party registration here, because they're seeing very high turnout in urban and suburban areas that are very blue in Texas. So I think Texas is a lot closer than what that early vote model says. And even according to the polls, Texas is not like double digits Republican. I really doubt it'll go over 10 for Trump. I think more realistically, you'll see it go about 5 to 6 points in his favor, something like that. I think these polls are kind of overestimating him here. Other recent ones have him only up by 4 or 7, so I think it's more in that range. So I expect Trump to win here by a similar margin to 2020. He'll get a 5-point victory in the state of Texas. So in Nebraska's 2 districts, we're seeing a rating change here because we got a recent Nebraska poll done by the New York Times. They found Nebraska second as a 12-point Harris lead. And I'm inclined to believe it. We saw Nebraska second shift very left in 2016 to 2020. And I think we're going to see it again here. This district's just veering left off a cliff here, and this is really uncompetitive for Republicans, this district now. And even Nebraska's first, New York Times only found it as a 4-point Trump lead. I don't think it's going to go to 4-point. I think Trump's more likely to win this district by about 8 to 9, I would say. I would probably put it as about an 8-point victory in Nebraska's first. Actually, a 9-point victory. I think that's a bit more likely. But we're going to see it trend to the left by about 2 percentage points. It was only 11-point district back in 2020 under its current lines. New Mexico's out of reach. I don't believe the people saying it's going to flip or the internals here only have Harris up by 3. I really doubt that. Harris is going to win New Mexico by 8. In Virginia, they're really overreading to their early vote here. They're thinking that just because Republicans are doing a lot better than 2020, it doesn't mean a lot because Trump's actually encouraging his voters to vote early, and that's going to hurt his support on election day here. And we're not going to see like the Republicans win election day by 30. That's just simply not going to happen. But we are going to see a bit of a shift to the right in Virginia. I think Harris is only winning the state by about 7 as of right now. So I don't think it's going to be lean, but I do think it's going to go to likely, and it's only going to be a 7-point win. In Maine and New Hampshire, I think these states are pretty likely blue states. New Hampshire early vote looks good for Democrats. Maine looks really good, which is a bit of a surprise here. Maybe Maine second could narrow up a bit, and that would help Jared Golden here because he doesn't have much of a delta between him and Harris. But I think both these states are likely blue. Again, Trump's coalition doesn't really appeal well to these voters. He's not going to do a college-educated voters in these two states, but I would keep him about likely blue, similar to 2020. Minnesota as well. I think Harris is on track to win the state by 7. Again, polls that are saying she's only up by 5 on average, I just don't believe it. Walz is a popular governor of Minnesota, and that's going to matter. So I think she wins it by about 7. In North Carolina, polls actually have North Carolina is decently close, R+1. I think Trump's going to win the state by 1.5 points because we could take a look at the early voting numbers, and they're not the best for the Democrats. They're down by 1 here. So usually Democrats lead the early vote in North Carolina. So unless the Democrats have very good voter turnout on election day in North Carolina, that's the only way they're going to win this state because it just so far Republicans have a 30,000 vote lead in the state, and you really don't want to be the party that's down here, especially if you're the Democrats. So I think North Carolina is lean Republican as of right now. In Georgia, the early vote says the Republicans are up more, but this is just, it's an estimate. It's not even based on party registration, these numbers. They're just guessing, really. So we don't really know the party registration of voters in Georgia because there is none. It's really just a racially based turnout state. And so far, the black turnout is at 26%, and I believe in 2020 it was the total black turnout was about 27% of the electorate. So it's a point lower this time around, but that shouldn't hurt the Democrats' chances so much because even in 2016 it was a bit blacker than it was in 2020, and the state still shifted 5 points to the left here. And another thing to point out here is the other vote total in the racial turnout data. The other vote total was pretty high. And that leads me to believe a lot of the people in the other vote total are actually black voters, and they're just incorrectly listed as others when they should be listed as black voters here. Because we're seeing very high turnout in the urban areas in Georgia, especially in Fulton County. We're seeing very high turnout in the surrounding counties around there. DeKalb, we're seeing very high turnout too. Gwinnett, we're seeing them pick up in this last week of early voting as of right now. We're seeing that turnout go up like 2 to 3% every day, percentage-wise, the turnout in those urban areas. So I think Georgia's a lot closer right now. I used to have it as lean Republican, but right now I'm going to put it as tilt Republican. I think Trump's a narrow favorite in Georgia. Who knows? Maybe I'll change my prediction on November 4th in Georgia, but I think it's a lot closer than I currently thought before, just because I looked at the data here. And that last week of early voting is important. And we're seeing record turnout in Georgia, by the way. That's good for Democrats, that they get the higher turnout in a state like Georgia. The higher turnout, the better it is for Democrats here in Georgia. So in Nevada, early voting in Nevada is not going the best for Democrats right now. They're down by 5 in early voting. Republicans have like a 40,000 vote lead here. So it's really, Democrats need to lock in those last 3 days where it's only mail-in voting. They need to erase the Republicans' firewall here. If they can't do that, then Trump's going to win this state. And right now, I think Trump has a narrow advantage here. I think it's tilt Republican right now just based off this early vote data. I don't think Democrats should have pulled funds from Nevada. I think that was doing something a bit too soon here. I think they should reallocate those funds back to Nevada to get that voter turnout up. But Harris could still win the state. She could still turn it around, especially those mail-in ballots in those last 3 days. It's a pretty lenient state when it comes to mail-in ballots, too. They accept it even if it's late. So she still has a chance here, but I think Trump has a narrow advantage in Nevada right now. And it's a less college-educated state than other swing states, especially Arizona. Now, getting to Arizona, currently the Republicans have a lead of 129,000 in this state, according to the early vote, and that's pretty good for them compared to last cycles. But the one point I would like to make is not all these Republicans are voting for Trump. I did some estimates. I think like 11% of the people who've already voted for Trump that are Republicans are actually voting for Harris. There's a lot of moderate Republicans in this state. There's a lot of cross party support here for Harris, especially with Republicans in this one state, because a lot of them are McCain Republicans. They don't like the party that Trump took this party at this point in time. So again, I think she has a pretty good shot in Arizona. I even did math before, and I came up with a 98,000 to 99. I think it was 98,000 vote lead for Harris among the current early vote here. So it just depends on how Republicans split right now, because right now I think we're gonna hit like a Republican advantage of 250,000 in Arizona at the end of the day. So it depends on those independents split. But they usually split for the Democrats here. I think Biden did pretty well with them last time around. So just judging based off that, I actually think Arizona is leaning towards Harris here. And we even saw in 2020 and 2022, Maricopa, they had a Republican registration advantage here in terms of turnout. They still lost that county because of that cross-party support here. So the numbers are a bit misleading in Arizona. I really think Harris has a narrow edge here as of right now. So I think Arizona's a bit easier to win than North Carolina and Georgia, and even Nevada is as of right now, just because the early vote's not going the greatest for the Democrats in Nevada. But again, Trump's just not that well liked in Arizona. We could take a look at the polling, and I can make my point about that. Even in 2022, they said Kari Lake was going to win by a few points, and then she didn't. And another thing is, Trump isn't near 50% here in this state. Not a lot of polls have him hitting 50. The occasional one, but most of the time he's at 48 or 49%. There's a lot of those undecideds, and a lot of late breaking deciders are ending up going towards Harris, according to some polls here. I think this data orbital poll was a huge outlier, by the way. They had Kari Lake leading the poll. That's how you know it's a huge outlier. Results commissioned by a Republican, so I really doubt that. But let's just go back to the map. I think Arizona is a tilt blue state as of right now. I think she has a narrow advantage here. That could change if we see Republican turnout keep going up. If it hits like 300,000 turnout advantage, I would be saying Trump is the favorite in Arizona. Right now, I think it's going to be 250,000. And in 2022, it was 200,000, and both Democrats in the governorship and the Senate race ended up winning when it was 200,000. So it being 250,000, that's totally doable. Mark Kelly won by 5 points. So it's totally doable. But if it hits 300,000, I would change the state. So this is a state to keep an eye on for November 4th, my final prediction. And now we're down to the 3 Rust Belt states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Michigan, I think, is the most likely state to go for Harris. She's doing great in the early vote. She's also doing pretty good in the early vote in Wisconsin. A lot of these others are breaking towards the Democrats here. So these are 2 states she's doing pretty well with the early vote as of right now. And the polling, we've seen a lot of new polls out in Michigan having her up here, and she's even up in the 538 average, nearly at 1% here. And even the Republican internals, the best they can say is Trump's up by 1. Well, we're getting like Harris plus 5 polls lately, too. So I think Harris has a pretty good advantage in the state of Michigan as of right now. So I have this as a lean blue state. I think she's at least going to win Michigan. If Trump wins like 6 out of 7 states, I could see Michigan being that one state she carries. And then we have Wisconsin. Again, Wisconsin's very, very close in the polls right now. The gold standard poll we haven't seen since September. I think it was Milwaukee University poll, I believe. Let me just check. But we haven't seen that poll actually had Harris up by like 5 in Wisconsin, but that was all the way back in September. So or Marquette University Law School. That's what it was. But I think they're going to show a tightening of the race in their next poll. Probably only a Harris +2 lead here. But in the latest polls, it's extremely close in Wisconsin. But we've gotten a few more favorable Harris polls lately that shows her up. And even the Republican internal polls, or not internal polls, the Republican Commission polls, they only show Trump up with a 1% lead here. I know Wisconsin has a history of underestimating Republican support, but 2022 we saw that wasn't the case. So that leads me to believe I think Harris has a narrow advantage here. Again, she's doing well in the early vote in Wisconsin too, but I think it's going to be very close. I think it's going to be a tilt blue state. And then we go down to the state of Pennsylvania. And so far, the early vote advantage for Democrats is 381,000 votes against the Republicans. And those indies in Pennsylvania break 70-30 in the mail-ins. So that would be a 444,000 vote lead for Democrats here. And I'm hearing some reports that in Philadelphia, there's a bit of a backlog, and we're going to see that update on Election Day. So we're not even going to know what the firewall truly is for Democrats until Election Day when they update it. But I'm thinking with indies factored in, they're going to get over that 500,000 vote firewall. Just like 510,000, that's kind of what I expect the number to be as of right now. And I think that's good enough for Democrats to win the state of Pennsylvania. Again, we're seeing a lot of high propensity Republicans vote early in Pennsylvania, so that Election Day advantage is going to be a bit lower. Trump is actively saying to his supporters to vote early, and that's going to eat into their Election Day margin here. They're not going to win it by R+30 like they did on Election Day in 2020. In 2022, they won the early vote by about 10%, I believe. So it's probably going to be around the 2022 margin. So I would put Pennsylvania as a tilt blue state. As of right now, I have the map as 281 electoral votes for Harris and 257 electoral votes for Trump. So the biggest states I'm iffy on, Arizona and Wisconsin. Those are two states I'm iffy on, and I think Wisconsin's going to be the tipping point. So it would be like this. That would be the tipping point here to get Trump to 278. But I think Harris has a narrow advantage in Arizona. It could get worse if the Republicans get up to 300,000 vote advantage in Arizona. Then I think Trump would be the favorite there just based off those vote splits. But keep an eye on that. In Wisconsin, I just think she's narrowly favored just based off the gold standard poll. Early vote looks good for them in Wisconsin. Pennsylvania is another state to keep an eye on. Its firewall, will it get to 500,000 with Indies factored in? And Georgia is another state. Again, if black turnout, it keeps increasing throughout this last week. As we're seeing right now, it's a bit of an uptick, especially in Atlanta and surrounding suburbs. That's something to keep an eye on. But other than that, that's my current prediction. I think Harris wins the popular vote by 2.7% as of right now. And yeah, I think Harris has a 51% chance of winning the Electoral College. So it's a narrow advantage. This is a coin flip. It's really going to come down to these 7 battleground states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. Any of those states could just go to the other side here. So this election's very much in flux. Anyone can win it. Don't let anyone say, oh, this person has an 80% or 70% chance of winning. They're lying to you. They don't know what they're talking about. This election's basically a coin flip at this point. So your guess is as good as mine. So tell me your guesses down in the comment of what you think the election's going to be. What swing state you think is going to go what way. I'm very curious in hearing your guys' feedback. And as always, if you aren't subscribed to this channel yet, I highly recommend doing so. I'd greatly appreciate it. I do election videos like this all the time. And yeah, make sure you leave a comment down below what your predictions is. I'm very curious in hearing them. So this is just my current election prediction. I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.